Good afternoon. My name is Mike Ireland, and welcome to my comprehensive literacy program analysis. The objective in this video is to highlight some of the findings of my program analysis. That document and written response is available from me. If you're wanting to look at it and you're not the professor, please reach out to me via email. We use RAS Plus. I've also heard it referred to as reading A to Z at other points in time, but between RAS Plus, writing A to Z, and science A to Z, and vocabulary A to Z, there's an entire suite of products that does allow us to reach different areas of the literacy curriculum. And that's a screenshot from my screen earlier today. So when looking at curriculum, I had a conversation with Nix Henry. That's the curriculum and instructional coordinator here at Weemagiquad. So I do want to say chi miigwech, which means many thanks, in Anishinaabe to them for their time and showing me some of the behind the scenes things I might not see in the classroom or from the classroom. So to begin, there is no official written framework or mission statement for literacy curricula. The goal obviously is to find something that is trauma informed, that has diverse materials and works for our students. But you won't find a piece of paper with that written on it. The Reading A to Z program, or RAS Plus as I'm just going to call it from here, along with the other tools, they are based on grade level standards that students should be working on. And you can see it build on itself. If you look at some of the elements at the lower L, so maybe like a kindergarten level, you're going to see phonics and phonemic information. By the time you get up to the higher level, there's some pretty thorough written pieces. So you can kind of see it build up as students develop the skills. Our curriculum and instructional coordinator researches and vets each resource that is approved for use. They spend their time looking at studies that show whether it's effective, look at whether it's going to meet all of the standards, whether it's going to be good for our students and staff. It is the personal purpose of our curriculum instructional coordinator to populate our classrooms with diverse materials at a variety of reading and writing levels. On multiple occasions over recent years, they've sought out grants that kind of give us more materials in which we could supplement our curriculum and provide good classroom libraries from diverse materials. And it might go without saying at a tribal school that diversity kind of means more for us. I recognize that some of our older programs that you would have seen in the past, you might see certain demographics being featured. Well, we obviously, that wouldn't speak to our students. So we want diversity from multiple cultures. Officially, we utilize the related Learning A to Z product, Writing A to Z, in order to meet those essential elements. And it does that. There are a few of us that use mystery writing as well, but that also meets the essential elements. And we do kind of pilot it along with at Nix's approval. The Learning A to Z suite of programs do reflect multiple areas of literacy, including reading, writing, and vocabulary. Now, as far as working it into other content areas, that is kind of at the behest of the classroom teachers. I know as I sit here this summer, maybe kind of trying to align some of our texts that are found in here to what we might be covering in science and social studies so that I can kind of bring some of that all together. But the RAS Plus itself, along with writing A to Z and vocabulary A to Z, that does do a fairly good job of covering those together. The program allows for instructional strategies that are appropriate for above, below, and on level students. Even within the same topics, you will find often 3 different texts written at different levels. You couldn't find materials on that same topic that might even be, either lower or higher than what you're aiming for. But it is really useful where I could hand one of my students a book and another student a book, and it kind of give the same information but be available to them. There's also a online piece where these materials can be read to the student, and they can even complete quizzes and answer questions there. And I do utilize that, particularly for students where decoding is a struggle if I'm trying to really look at comprehension. RAS Plus is fairly well organized on the student side. Once I show them where to go to find a particular reading, it's fairly simple. There's some criticism from other teachers about the teaching side of it. It changes occasionally. Once you memorize it, I know my way around it. But if I was a newer teacher, I would find myself asking some questions and saying, okay, where is this material located? Where can I find phonics? Where can I find a section on main ideas or sequence of events? I can say that, as kind of alluded to under curriculum, RAS Plus program does include a diverse collection of texts. So if you're going to sit down and actually read them all, you're going to get a number of different viewpoints. You're going to get different topics. It's not monocultural. And the program does come with a variety of options to meet students' needs. You can do everything from reading to writing digitally. I tend to use a little bit of both with this program. I find a value of putting a paper in a student's hand, but sometimes especially if I'm doing it as cross curricular and getting background information, giving the student a choice to read it online or listen to it online can be helpful and time saving. But I also know that students that sometimes will like to just listen to the slower reading. You do have the ability as a teacher to assign it in a way that students who need that support of having it read to them can read it or have it read to them. Whereas students who are more than capable, have the background knowledge, but they may not be able to just have it read to them. Not to say there's not a value in having things read to them, but sometimes they may use it to slow things down for themselves and use up some of their time. It does include, like I mentioned, reading, writing, and vocabulary aspects. It is possible to integrate that fairly effectively into existing programs. As far as professional development goes, there are links to recorded webinars and videos meant to provide on-demand professional development opportunities. When we first acquired the program, there was a live session where they kind of walked us through some of those elements. We also employ a literacy specialist who is available for individual coaching or full group professional development opportunities. Moving on to assessment, at Wemoji Quad, just like most places, there's the typical fall, winter, spring testing windows where we're measuring growth using programs like NWEA, DIBELS, Words Their Way for the literacy pieces. Most of the assessments I do are outside of the RAS Plus program. There are, with each of the stories, going to be some sorts of both formative and summative assessments that I can use and utilize. And honestly, sometimes I use them to help teach them the nature of answering questions. Progress monitoring at our school, the most common way is DIBELS. Obviously, we don't want to do the NWEA every other week or every week in certain things, but DIBELS is a very good one for measuring at the fifth grade level uh, comprehension via the Maze assessment or oral reading fluency. And there are a variety of other tests like nonsense word fluency that lower grade levels um, tend to utilize the most, but would be available to me if a student needed that. Assessment data is used to guide instructional decisions, beginning at the classroom level and through a macro look at the entire school. We host monthly data meetings where we will look at both the whole classroom's data, but we often will hone in on students within the MTSS process, uh, setting up those progress monitoring sessions, seeing if they're effective, if we need to tweak them, what other things that can be done. Uh, and in those meetings, you will usually find the curriculum and instructional coordinator, our literacy specialist, potentially some of our interventionists, and in that case, quite often the building principal. It is expected assessment will be aligned to standards and provide a measure of teaching and learning. At WEA, you can kind of get a good look at speaking specifically to the literacy test, the reading growth test. It'll tell you where they're at and what they kind of need next. So that's going to be very helpful. You can kind of get an idea how their growth compares to where it should be. And I can utilize that both both at the beginning of the year and especially in the winter to kind of check myself and see where things are. So I find it very useful. And then obviously at the end of the year, kind of gives you a chance to reflect. Although that's not going to be as helpful for those students, but especially with me teaching fifth grade, I can't necessarily easily pass that on to their middle schoolers. But if you were in any other grade level, you could pass this information on to their teacher for next year. The curriculum and instructional coordinator, along with the literacy specialist, do support our assessment in several ways. We have an accommodation form for students that either are required to have an accommodation for testing, such as small group or one-on-one. And then we have students that are recommended for that. Like I can visualize, say, you know what, the student, while they may not have a non-public service plan, an IEP if you were in public schools, they test better with, or in this situation, they will help us with that testing. They'll provide, both of them are willing to provide professional development or answer questions, help us train on administering the test, available for problem solving if the need arises. And as teachers, we are given guidance on what data is collected and why and how it's going to be used. And then we go into those data meetings that were mentioned above. Process for change. I've honestly gotten to see this a little bit more with math as we're looking for a new curriculum. Was not actively involved in the last switch for literacy when we went from a program known as Journeys to RAS Plus. It is led by the curriculum and instructional coordinator. They do most of the legwork and most of the research. Administration is supportive of changes, particularly with the case of the director of education. She's going to be involved in looking, at the budget constraints, how that fits in, being able to make sure that we can get everything we need to effectively implement a program. There is no formal role for educators or other stakeholders below administration and TEAB. Now, TEAB is Tribal Education Advisory Board. It would be equivalent to a school board in a public school district. There's no written teachers will or teachers can. That's not to say that we're not permitted. I know that as a nosy teacher, sometimes I ask questions, and when I ask questions, I've had opportunities to kind of sit down with some of the material and say, you know what, I'd like to try this, or I think we should try this. That's why my classroom uses mystery writing instead of writing A to Z. Kind of pilot that and provide data to our instructional coordinator to make sure that that's working effectively. So essentially, if we ask, we're a part of it. Professional development is provided on curriculum tools, though those sessions are mainly presenter-led. There's not a ton of opportunities to get together and collaborate as a whole group. Most collaboration goes on kind of behind the scenes. So finally, the analysis here. I do recommend that the first step be to create a team of willing educators who will continue to review programs that may be a best fit for our students. I understand that there are some staff members who may not want any part of that. And maybe those aren't the best people that you want on that kind of a team because it can be heavy in work, as I'm sure most of us watching this video understand. But having a team can probably take a little bit of the legwork too off of the curriculum and instructional coordinator. I recommend the literacy specialists have more time freed up to provide literacy coaching during the academic day. Our literacy specialist has to provide tier 3 interventions and coach. So a lot of the coaching comes kind of after hours, after the teaching, but I think it would be very helpful for the literacy specialist to be able to get into the classroom and make observations, help teachers where they need to. And finally, I recommend the unwritten elements be published in written so that we're always aware of the goals and procedures. I think it just kind of helps us all to pull in the same way. Lack of information in any situation can sometimes lead to questions, and I think it's something that could be avoided. I'm certain that there's already a process, so it's just a matter of putting it on paper and in showing us where we can participate in it. And in the citations page. Well, I want to thank you for watching the video. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Hope everyone has a Minogishigad, which means a good day. And Bama P, or see you later.